The morning of September 14th, 1972, at San Francisco International Airport, began like any other autumn day, enveloped in a thick, chilling blanket of coastal fog that rolled over the runways. Inside Terminal 3, the atmosphere was a chaotic symphony of clicking heels, echoing announcements, and the low, collective murmur of hundreds of travelers rushing to catch their flights. Among the sea of anonymous faces walked a man who moved with an unmistakable, almost predatory grace. He wore a sharply tailored, dark slate gray suit, a pair of oversized, iconic aviator sunglasses, and carried a single, modest leather suitcase. This man was Bruce Lee. He was at the absolute peak of his global fame, having recently completed filming for projects that would forever alter the landscape of martial arts cinema. Yet here, in the cold, transitional space of an American transit hub, he was just another passenger navigating the crowd. Concurrently, cutting through the same crowd from the opposite direction was an imposing figure who demanded attention without speaking a word, standing at an immense 6 feet 4 inches and weighing a solid, muscular 265 pounds. This individual was a highly decorated active-duty military commando. His uniform bore the elite insignia of specialized combat units, and his entire demeanor radiated an intense, unapologetic aura of physical dominance. He was a man trained by the state to operate as a human weapon, a specialist in close-quarters destruction who had survived the brutal theaters of foreign warfare. To him, the world was divided into the strong and the weak, the predators and the prey. His years in elite military academies and combat zones had forged a deep-seated belief that sheer mass, brute force, and destructive capability were the ultimate currencies of human existence. As fate would have it, their paths converged near a crowded boarding gate area where a bottleneck had formed due to a minor baggage delay. Bruce Lee, maintaining a calm and methodical pace, adjusted his grip on his suitcase, stepping slightly to the right to allow an elderly couple to pass. In doing so, his shoulder inadvertently brushed against the massive frame of the passing commando. In a normal setting, such an interaction would warrant a brief, polite nod or a muttered apology. But for the commando, whose adrenaline was already heightened by the stress of travel and an innate need to assert dominance, this minor infraction from a seemingly insignificant stranger was an intolerable slight to his pride. The commando halted instantly, his heavy combat boots clicking sharply against the polished terrazzo floor. He slowly turned around, his chest expanding as he drew himself up to his full, terrifying height. He looked down at Bruce Lee, who stood at a modest 5 feet 7 inches and weighed a mere 135 pounds. To the untrained eye, the physical disparity was almost comical. It was a matchup between a mountain of military muscle and a slender, unassuming Asian man who looked more like an academic or an artist than a warrior. The commando let out a loud, booming laugh that cut through the ambient noise of the terminal, instantly drawing the attention of approximately 40 nearby passengers, airport staff, and security personnel who sensed the immediate danger. "Hey you!" the commando barked, his voice dripping with absolute contempt and racial undertones. "Why do weak, little Hong Kong chicks like you always think you can just wander into my way? Look at you. You're small, you're frail, and you don't belong in my space. What is your worth even supposed to be?" The words were designed to humiliate, to provoke a submissive apology or an emotional, sloppy outburst. The commando took a menacing step forward, extending a massive, calloused hand to deliver a heavy, patronizing shove to Bruce Lee's shoulder, fully expecting the slight man to lose his balance and crash backward into the rows of plastic terminal seating. The crowd gasped, several onlookers pulling out of the way, anticipating an immediate, one-sided act of violence. To the profound astonishment of the gathering crowd, Bruce Lee did not recoil, flinch, or display even a flicker of fear. As the commando's heavy hand made contact with his shoulder, Bruce did not fight the force. Instead, he subtly absorbed and redirected the kinetic energy through a minute rotation of his hips, a classic application of internal martial arts principles. He remained perfectly rooted to the ground, as if his feet were anchored deep beneath the concrete foundation of the airport. The shove, which would have sent an ordinary man sprawling, merely caused Bruce's suitcase to slip from his hand and tip over onto its side. The silence that followed was palpable. The 40-plus onlookers stopped breathing, terrified of what the giant soldier would do next. The commando's face flushed red with a mixture of confusion and heightened anger. He had expected total compliance, but instead, he felt as though he had pushed against a solid steel pillar disguised as a human being. Bruce Lee did not immediately speak. With an agonizingly slow, deliberate precision, he reached up with his right hand and calmly removed his aviator sunglasses. His eyes, dark and piercingly intense, revealed an ocean of absolute focus. There was no anger, no hatred, and no anxiety. He carefully folded the sunglasses and placed them securely inside the breast pocket of his tailored suit jacket. He then bent down, his movements smooth and unbroken like flowing oil, grabbed the handle of his leather suitcase, straightened it, and placed it neatly beside his leg. This level of psychological mastery was entirely alien to the commando. In the military, threats were met with immediate posturing, shouting, or defensive retreat. This quiet, artistic composure was deeply unsettling, and because the commando could not understand it, his ego demanded that he destroy it. He stepped directly into Bruce's personal space, his massive chest nearly touching Bruce's chin. "I'm talking to you, weakling," the commando roared, his spit flying through the air. "Are you slow, or are you just completely mute? Do you have any idea who I am and what I could do to you right here?" Bruce Lee tilted his neck back slightly, looking up into the eyes of the raging giant. The contrast between the commando's hyper-aggressive, chaotic energy and Bruce's serene, centered presence was stark. Bruce drew a deep, silent breath, centering his dantian, and spoke in a voice that was remarkably soft, low, yet carried an ice-cold resonance that seemed to vibrate through the very air of the terminal. "Just try," Bruce said. It was not a shout. It was a calm invitation. It was the statement of a man who did not need to prove his worth because he already operated on a plane of absolute certainty. The two words acted like a match thrown into a powder keg. The commando's remaining restraint dissolved instantly. He drew his massive right fist back, locking his shoulder, and launched a devastating, straight military punch aimed directly at Bruce Lee's jaw. The punch carried the full velocity of his 265-pound frame, a strike designed to break bone and render an opponent permanently unconscious. What occurred next happened so rapidly that the human brain could scarcely process the sequential reality of the events. To the 40 eyewitnesses, it appeared as though reality itself had skipped a frame. As the commando's massive fist cut through the air, traveling at a velocity trained for lethal efficiency, it seemed certain to obliterate its target. But Bruce Lee did not attempt to block the punch head-on. To fight force with force against an opponent twice one's size is a violation of the highest martial laws. Instead, at the exact microsecond the fist neared his face, Bruce executed a flawless structural evasion. Using minimal, hyper-efficient movement, he slipped his head a mere 2 inches to the left. The commando's fist grazed the empty air where Bruce's jaw had been just a fraction of a moment prior, the sheer wind of the punch rustling the fabric of Bruce's collar. The commando's immense forward momentum, now carrying no resistance, pulled his upper body slightly forward, creating a critical structural vulnerability. Bruce Lee, operating with the terrifying speed of his famous Jeet Kune Do philosophy, instantly filled the void left by the commando's missed strike. This was the execution of intercepting, striking the opponent at the very moment they are committed to an attack. With his right hand, Bruce's fingers snapped outward like a whip, intercepting the commando's extended right wrist in midair with a vice-like grip. Simultaneously, Bruce pivoted his left foot, opening his hips to channel the immense kinetic energy traveling up from the ground through his legs and torso. Without a single wasted motion, he chambered his right leg and unleashed a devastating, blindingly fast sidekick G-Tech, aimed with microscopic precision at the commando's solar plexus, the dense network of nerves located just beneath the sternum and ribs. The physics of the impact were absolute. The commando was moving forward with maximum velocity, and Bruce's kick was moving forward with equal, concentrated acceleration. When the two forces collided at a single, localized point on the commando's torso, the kinetic energy had nowhere to dissipate except inward into the soldier's skeletal and nervous systems. To the onlookers, the visual was shocking. The 265-pound military veteran's forward progress was instantly stopped dead in its tracks. For a fraction of a second, his boots actually lost contact with the terrazzo floor, his massive body appearing briefly suspended in midair by the sheer force of the foot buried in his chest. Before gravity could pull the Commando back down, Bruce Lee completed the kinetic chain. He snapped his kicking leg back down to the floor, using the downward momentum to execute a lightning-fast, sweeping low kick against the inside of the Commando's lead ankle. It was a textbook sweep, removing the final pillar of the soldier's support. With his center of gravity completely destroyed, the massive Commando crashed violently backward, his back and shoulders slamming into the polished airport floor with a resounding, echoing boom that sounded like a falling tree. The entire sequence, from the launch of the Commando's punch to his heavy impact on the floor, took precisely 4.5 seconds. It was a masterclass in the absolute economy of motion. No cinematic flair, no theatrical posturing, just pure, unadulterated combat science executed by a master of the craft. The immediate aftermath of the impact was defined by a terrifying, absolute silence in Terminal 3. The ambient sounds of the airport seemed to have vanished completely, replaced by the guttural, agonizing sounds of a giant fighting for his life, not against an enemy, but against his own biology. The Commando lay flat on his back, his arms sprawled out wide, his eyes wide with an expression of pure, unbridled terror. Bruce Lee's sidekick had hit the solar plexus with such pinpoint accuracy that it had instantaneously triggered a profound neurophysical reaction. The shock wave had traveled directly to the celiac plexus, causing an immediate, involuntary spasm of the diaphragm muscle. For the human respiratory system, this is a catastrophic failure. The diaphragm locks completely, rendering the lungs utterly incapable of expanding to draw in oxygen. The Commando's face rapidly transitioned from a pale shock to a deep, suffocating crimson. He curled his legs inward slightly, his massive chest heaving convulsively as his brain screamed for air, yet his throat could produce nothing more than a dry, hollow wheeze. For the next 2 minutes, this highly trained military asset, capable of surviving extreme combat conditions, was reduced to a helpless state of absolute vulnerability, completely unable to draw a single breath of air. His entire world had shrunk down to the desperate, agonizing struggle to unlock his own chest. Bruce Lee, conversely, stood over him, completely unfazed. His breathing was deep, rhythmic, and utterly undisturbed, as if he had just finished a casual stroll rather than neutralizing a lethal threat. He did not look at the Commando with anger, nor did he look at him with a sense of triumph or pride. His expression was that of a scientist observing a predictable reaction in a laboratory environment. There was no theatrical celebration, no raising of fists, and no grandstanding for the stunned onlookers, who were now staring at him with a mixture of reverence and absolute awe. He slowly reached down, his fingers wrapping firmly around the handle of his leather suitcase. Once more, he lifted it with ease, adjusted his suit jacket to ensure it sat perfectly on his shoulders, and took 2 steps forward, stopping right beside the head of the gasping soldier. The Commando, still fighting the paralysis of his diaphragm, managed to look up, his vision blurred with tears of asphyxiation, staring at the man he had called a chick only seconds prior. The illusion of his physical superiority had been permanently erased, replaced by the profound realization that he had just crossed paths with a level of human evolution he could not comprehend. Standing over the defeated giant, Bruce Lee reached into his breast pocket, retrieved his aviator sunglasses, and smoothly placed them back over his eyes. The dark lenses concealed his gaze, but his aura remained intensely focused. He looked down at the Commando, whose breathing was finally beginning to return in shallow, ragged, painful gasps, and spoke in a calm, authoritative monotone that carried the weight of an ancient Eastern proverb. "A big body can only generate isolated power," Bruce said, his words cutting through the quiet terminal. But real fighting is not about how much muscle you carry. Real fighting is about neural balance, fluid speed, and the seamless execution of the kinetic chain. You committed the greatest mistake a warrior can make. You measured a man by his external size, rather than the depth of his internal skill. You believed your uniform and your mass made you untouchable. He paused for a brief moment, letting the words settle into the consciousness of the humiliated soldier, as well as the 40 spellbound witnesses who were listening to every syllable. "Empty your cup, Commando," Bruce added softly, referencing the classic Zen parable about letting go of one's preconceptions and ego in order to truly learn and grow. If your cup is full of pride and arrogance, there is no room for true knowledge. Today, your cup was overflowing with illusions. Without waiting for a response, and without offering another glance to the crowd or the security guards who were now hesitantly approaching the scene, Bruce Lee turned smoothly on his heel. He walked away with a relaxed, balanced stride, his suitcase swinging gently at his side as he disappeared into the tunnel of the boarding gate to catch his flight. He left behind a terminal full of people whose understanding of human potential had been fundamentally altered in less than 5 seconds. The Commando remained on the floor for several minutes, assisted eventually by 2 airport paramedics and a terminal supervisor. As they helped him sit up, his physical strength was slowly returning, but his psychological framework was completely shattered. He refused to give his name or file an official report regarding the incident. When the airport security details attempted to question him to understand if he wished to press charges, the Commando simply shook his head in silence, staring at the floor. He knew that any investigation would only bring public documentation to the most complete, devastating, and humbling defeat of his entire life. He quietly gathered his misplaced military gear and walked out of the terminal, vanishing into the San Francisco fog, a deeply changed man. Though both parties walked away from Terminal 3 in silence, an event witnessed by 40 people in a public transit hub can never remain completely secret. Word of the encounter filtered slowly through the tight-knit, underground martial arts community of California, eventually reaching the ears of journalists and practitioners who documented the golden era of combat arts in the early 1970s. In December of 1972, a prominent columnist for Black Belt magazine sat down with Bruce Lee for what would become one of his final, most philosophically profound interviews. During the discussion, the interviewer asked Bruce a highly specific question regarding how a smaller practitioner could realistically survive a real-world encounter against an aggressive, highly trained military or law enforcement opponent possessing a massive weight advantage. Bruce Lee leaned forward, smiled subtly, and answered using language that deeply echoed the physics and philosophy of the San Francisco airport encounter. When you look at a massive tree, Bruce explained, it appears strong, rigid, and completely immovable. But when the great storm comes, the rigid tree breaks because it tries to fight the wind with pure resistance. The bamboo, however, is slender, flexible, and soft. It yields to the wind, it bends, and when the storm passes, it snaps back with immense, explosive power. In combat, you must never fight force with force. If a man weighing 260 pounds throws his weight at you, do not try to stop him. Help him, guide him in the direction he is already going, and add your own speed to his momentum. When you understand how to connect your mind to your neural system, your whole body becomes a whip. A whip doesn't need to weigh 200 pounds to crack open a man's skin. It only needs velocity, structure, and a clear path. The legacy of those 5 seconds at the airport lives on as a definitive real-world validation of Bruce Lee's martial philosophy, Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. It proved conclusively that martial arts was not an art of aesthetic performance or theatrical choreography, but a precise, empirical science rooted in human anatomy, kinetic energy, and psychological dominance. The nameless Commando, according to private journals discovered decades later, never fought again for ego or pride. He spent the remainder of his life studying the quiet, internal arts of movement, having learned from a master that the most dangerous force in the universe is not that which roars like thunder, but that which flows silently, adaptively, and unstoppably, like water.